Welcome to the panel discussion about migration, skills development and social inclusion. I'm very pleased to be joined by an excellent panel of experts, which I kindly ask to join me on the panel. We have Mrs. Natasha Koudouna-Xenofondos, Project Manager at the International Organization for Migration Cyprus office. We have Dr. Bashak Yafgan, Head of Research at the Migration Policy Group. We have Mrs. Maria Vittoria Galarpi, Senior Human Capital Development Expert at the European Training Foundation, which is going to be with us online. And at the end, Mrs. Gemma Barel, Director of the Culture, Gender and Civil Society Department at the European Institute of the Mediterranean. Thank you all for being here today. Thank you for having us. Yeah, thank you. Migration is often framed as a challenge, but today we want to shift that perspective. This panel explores how migration can become a driver of regional growth, particularly when we invest in skills development, labor market integration, and inclusive approaches. We'll focus on practical solutions, how we can move beyond barriers, such as language gaps and difficulties in recognizing qualifications, and instead to look how to unlock the potential that migrants brings to our economies and societies. Let's begin with a short round of opening remarks. I would like to invite each of you to introduce yourselves. So, Mrs. Koudouna-Xenofondos, can we start with you?
Yes. Hello. Can you hear me? Very good. So I feel since we're talking about privilege, it's my honor and privilege to be here with you all today here. Thank you to the organizers. I represent the IOM, International Organization for Migration, in my function today as project manager in the specialization area, protection work for unaccompanied migrant children. So I'd be happy to share my insights in a work that I've been doing now for over 10 years. And at a period, starting from, and I see our other panelists is also joining us online. Hello to Maria Vittoria as well. Starting at the time when support for separated children in conflict in Syria was due here in Cyprus, and then expanding to at times of COVID, separating, not separating, but assisting children, taking them out of first reception health centers into the community and helping them to transition through adulthood by giving them housing, protection and integration support. But I can stop here and then delve later on.
Thank you.
More details.
Over to Dr. Bashak.
Hello, I'm Bashak Yavshan. I'm the head of research of Migration Policy Group, a former academic actually, who has worked on refugee protection integration in first countries of asylum. And I'm very happy to be here also, waking up to a beautiful morning, sun-kissed with the breeze of lemon trees. You can tell I am also from this area and I do not appreciate the weather in Brussels. But so it's beautiful to be here, and thank you very much for the invitation. And I'm representing Migration Policy Group, an institution that I'm fully committed to the work of that is for over 30 years doing evidence-based research based in Brussels, and is committed to work on migration, integration, and anti-discrimination. So not the most popular words nowadays in this shrinking space for CSOs, which we are experiencing the curse. And we are in a position, even though we're legally speaking an NGO, we are more of a think tank that kind of connects the policy world together with the civil society. We work in collaboration with many We do comparative work for which we collaborate with national experts, like the ones here at CARDET, actually, and we also collaborate with migrant-led organizations, and then we do a lot of advocacy work as well. And then all the research we're doing, we're using the results for policy advocacy. We're trying to convince policymakers that migrant integration is still a viable policy alternative. It's not just about returns and externalizations on this migration topic. And there are very smart ways of managing migration, managing skills. Those will be some things we'll be talking about. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Mrs. Gemma.
Thank you very much. I'm Gemma Barilla, coming from Barcelona, a very Mediterranean city also, where we are placed in the European Institute for Mediterranean. This is a think and do tank, and this is why I suppose I can be here and sitting with you today, because our main proposal since the starting of the Barcelona process in 1995 is to support the Euro-Mediterranean relations, but not only by studying and by doing the policy assistance in terms of research, but also acting very closely to the civil society organization, because we are convinced that what is happening in the Euro-Mediterranean is because this ecosystem of civil society at large, we understood civil society, not only CCOs or NGOs, but also in a very complex ecosystem of actors that we are doing with this. And since we were there from the beginning, we were organizing the first civil society conference in Barcelona in 1995, what I am a little bit young to explain, because I was coordinating this conference. And believe me, it was a momentum where everything happens there, it seems possible. So the last point, we joined forces with the Union for the Mediterranean and also in collaboration with the Annalyn Foundation, and we organized and the European Union, and we organized in November in Barcelona another civil society conference that can be relevant for the exercise today. And my main proposal today is to share with you some reflections on how inclusion in the Mediterranean should be taking civil society and migrations as two main factors. This is not useful, and this is not something very, very, very easy. And just to point that as representative and coordinators of the Annalyn Foundation in Spain, we are coordinating the work of 190 organizations devoted to civil society, to intercultural dialogue. So the message today is also addressed to provide our experience from this work.
Great, thank you. Mrs. Maria Vittoria, can you hear us?
Yes.
Great.
Good morning. Thank you very much for inviting us, ETF. I'm very pleased to be with you and for making my inputs available online. I'm the migration focal point here at ETF. ETF is the European Training Foundation, is an agency of the European Union. We are based in Torino, northern Italy, with the mandate to work outside the European Union. So we work in the Western Balkans, in Central Europe, Central Asia, Northern Africa, Middle East, but also beyond with an increasingly global mandate. To do what? Basically to support reforms of education and training systems to improve employability of citizens, be it in their countries of origin or abroad. And that's where migration steps in. For us, the angle of migration is on the skills of migrants, which we believe are the best asset for them, for us as countries of destination, and for their own countries. We set up a community of international experts to study better what are the challenges, but also the good practices about making legal pathways of labor migration a triple win for the migrants and for their countries of origin and of destination through skills. I prepared some slides with all this information much more in detail, and the organizer will normally share with you. the slides. Just one additional point to the slides is that we work constantly with civil societies organizations in our work, which is about, as I said, research, but also is about policy advice within the framework of EU policies, including on labor migration. And we believe that civil society organizations should not be seen only as project implementers, but rather as co-creator. And we advocate that civil society organizations in the countries where we work are constantly associated in the policy dialogue on how to make training and education system more relevant for the people and to help their employability, not only in lifelong learning, but also in initial training. We developed very recently a policy briefing based on studies conducted in several countries. And I will share the link to this policy briefing, which is accessible to our in our website, on how we work in many countries and how we recognize the role of civil societies organization for the development of human capital. I stop here for now. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So let's move into our discussion. Ms. Ndas, I will start with you. I will cut the question a little bit short due to the time limitations we have. And I want to ask you, from your experience, what practical strategies have proven to be the most effective in addressing language barriers and skills mismatches for migrants entering the labor market?
Okay, so let's cut into the chase of things, as they say. When we talk about strategies for skills development and inclusion, especially when we're dealing with vulnerable populations, but as well as youth. Youth is our future, right? So we have to consider it. You are asking practical interventions. However, we have to have, when we're talking about strategies in mind, global inequalities, which we have discussed already in the previous session. And thank you for bringing it, Francesca, onto the table, because when we talk strategies, we do have to bring in the global, and IOM, as you know, has a footprint in all UN member states. So when we say, because very often we use these phrases, but what do they really mean, global inequalities? It means that we have to understand the circumstances of the people concerned in any context. We have to understand the discrepancies in wages. We have to understand all these things. And then we have to capitalize on what migrants and youth in this case bring. So in practical terms, for skills development, what does it mean? Do the assessments, needs assessments, do the mapping of the services, and help people get better jobs. So our experience, I wish I had the opportunity to show numbers. Sometimes they're quite impactful when you see people coming from arriving here, separated from families, are in dire circumstances, and in the end see them actually get into jobs. Yes, I mean, this is practical intervention for me. And you were saying before as well, Francesca, knowing the privileges we carry, and then seeing someone in that dire circumstance, yes, getting a job in the, logistics sector, storage, or hospitality sector, Lanza, you know, at the restaurant and the washing. Then you do see that child's progress. You talked about progress before. Had a chance to, yes. Then you do, and as a mother, you do feel that person's progress. And then vulnerability, I didn't get a chance to talk about it before, but you know, because we talk about humans, right? So when we talk about humans, we have to be able to measure that skills development progress and social inclusion on a customized case management level, right? If you want me to be practical. So, and yes, we deal with vulnerabilities. What does it mean to project manage vulnerabilities? It means that when a child has transitioned to adulthood but is not yet ready to exit the system and get a job, can remain in supportive care for a longer period. I hope
Yes.
that can start off a conversation.
Of course, thank you so much. So building on that, Dr. Bashak, from a European perspective, which policies approaches have been the most effective in improving the recognition of migrants' qualifications?
I'm going to be very happy to answer that question, but I'd like to start with this general idea of integration first, because a lot of times the idea of many policymakers around the world, but also in the EU, are trying to attract skills. And for this, some even think about retention, which is, a silver lining. But unfortunately, there is a very isolated effort to regarding improving policies on attracting skills or skilled migrants, as if this can be really isolated from other areas of integration. Even in countries which are not doing good at all on integration policies, they have great skills attraction legislation. In the end, it doesn't work. So we need to look at what works, what doesn't work. What works is a good skills attraction program along with integration policy. Why? Because individuals with high skills are very information-seeking people, and they worry about their wives, their children, their husbands, their families, whether or not they would have access to good education services, whether or not they would have access to good health care, whether or not they'll be discriminated against. If they're discriminated against, are there any avenues to seek? So, which is why we emphasize the importance of more of a holistic approach to attracting skills, which is why for the almost last 20 years, in collaboration with you, we're implementing this flagship project, which is, according to the Commissioner of DG Home, a gold standard of integration, which is called MyPEX. I invite you all to check out the website, mypex.eu. The website is really fun, interactive. The data is fully public. There is so much for NGOs, for local governments, for national policymakers, for international organizations to learn and play with the data. But what it does is it's basically scoring the countries on their integration policies, about 50 countries. It's an expert-based indicator approach along 8 policy areas. And those policy areas are, yes, labor market integration, education, healthcare access, and anti-discrimination, but also access to naturalization, permanent residency, family unification, and political participation. Oh, I did it in one count. Okay, so, and we're very happy about doing this, but we're a bit upset with the final results because we are seeing a major stagnation across the EU member states when it comes to integration policies. We are used to like big jumps, nice increases on integration policy. The EU average over 100 is 54. There's huge heterogeneity across the scores. Some countries have scores like 85, 90. The others have like 30s, 20s, which is, there's a lot of room for improvement for some others. And that also is a challenge with the implementation of the pact, obviously, but also with regards to skills attraction. So I want to tell you a little bit of Cyprus, bring it all to Cyprus in this political framework. So we have countries like Germany who have increased their score a bit. It's not all very dark, right? We have countries like Spain that improved their score a bit. We have countries like Portugal who have been leaders over the years, but they are going through a very tough process lately, which hopefully will be reversed with the new government from the perspective of migrant integration. I'm not taking any political positions, just practical ones. What in Italy, we see stagnation. In Greece, we see stagnation. In some Eastern European countries like Poland, Czechia, Romania, a bit improvement because of the arrival of Ukrainian refugees, but minor improvement. We were hoping so much more. So in Cyprus, stagnation. The policy is 41. There are some areas that improved, some areas that regressed, so to say. Cyprus is below France, Italy, Estonia, Greece, and Malta, for instance, in terms of the scoring. So I'm trying to motivate here. But there are improvements in the area of labor market, which is good, right? There isn't an improvement in the area of education, but they are nicely linked, and there's room for improvement there too. One thing that really worked is with a bit of push from the European Commission, the single permit directive is better implemented, which gives access to labor market to those that are members of families, family unified migrants. But there's still a lot of room to improve. So what else has been done? What else needs to be done? There's still critical restriction of non-EU citizens on access to labor markets. They face difficulties in changing jobs, face major legal and language barriers to work in self-employment and also in the public sector. And there's a lack of general and targeted support to improve migrant situation. And temporary residents do not get access to social security and assistance. So those are really the low-hanging fruits that can be picked up to improve the situation in the labor markets. Because when you think about it, if you are a high-skilled individual, you do not want to be, leaving your family for a very long time. So if it's a low score on family unification, that is bad. But if you're like Portugal, which used to even allow families to be united before coming, then before arriving to Portugal, that's definitely gonna get you ahead on this game. Or if you are if you have good teacher trainings on diversity, if you have good programs that are recognizing the skills, linking, like in Germany, in Netherlands, there are specific programs for specific jobs that are needed in the labor market. But again, at this dim atmosphere, I'm gonna say turn to Spain. They have very nice legal pathways. Their definition of high skill is very wide. It's not just IT people, and their implementation of these legal pathways, even in circular migration, is proving super effective and successful. So if you're not afraid of it, you can actually really manage it well. I'll stop here because I'm using both interventions time together at this intervention.
No, thank you so much. So speaking about skills, I can move now to Mrs. Maria Vitoria to tell us a little bit on how we can leverage those skills to make labor migration more virtuous.
Thank you. Thank you for the question. When we talk about skills, as we know, there are different geometries that we have to intersect. On one side, the gender matters. On the other side, the skills levels. Are we talking about low-skilled, medium-skilled, highly skilled migrants? We normally talk a lot about highly skilled migrants, but we know the big bulk of migrants are medium-skilled. And then we have different migration flows. Are we talking about seasonal migrant worker or return migrants or migrants that are here to stay for long? Because their skills needs will be different. And then when we talk about skills, what do we mean? It's not only about vocational skills for job, it's also about language, as you rightly mentioned, but even more for retention, social, cultural, soft skills. And there is a high demand also for financial and entrepreneurial skills among migrants. As we know, migrants are much more entrepreneurial than resident people. In my country, Italy, the percentage of new companies established by migrants is increasing every year, and they became employers of other migrants, and if not, of Italians. So it's difficult. There is no silver bullet. What skills and how? It depends. It depends on the target groups. I'm saying something obvious, maybe to many of you, but there are 4 pillars that we identified. One is about data. Data about skills levels of migrants are very poor. We know very little about the qualifications and the skills levels of migrants in Europe, for instance. But also in our partner countries, because as we know, the countries neighboring Europe have become now countries of destination for migrants. Countries like Albania, that has got 40% of its own population abroad, has become a country of destination for migrant workers. So what I mean is that data should be collected more systematically about what skills, what qualification migrants bring. Because underutilization of the skills of migrants is there all the time, and this is a triple lose. The other thing is that skills intelligence is important if we want to make migration a win on the both sides. Our partner countries also need migrants, also need skills for their own labor markets. So we should be able to identify which skills are needed, not only for Europe, but also for the countries of origin and or countries of transit. So going beyond the specific ad hoc reports, which are very nice, very interesting, but we should be able to set up databases that inform us constantly on the evolving skills needs of the labor market. Then the second pillar is about policies. We normally see that migration has got its own policies, education its own policies, and employment its own policies. We think that there should be an integration of these kind of policies if we want skills to be relevant for migration, but also for the countries of origin, also, to make it a triple win. Then here it's an open door, the tripartite dialogue and governance. We believe that civil society organizations, for instance, they know a lot more than public sector about the needs of migrants, especially of certain subgroups. So the voice of those who know the grassroots reality of migrants should be institutionalized together with the employers, together with the governments, of course, and set up partnerships that are win-win for the sending and the receiving countries. On provision, very, very quickly, we could distinguish between initial training with much more structured training courses for youngsters, even unaccompanied children and migrants. Something that we promote a lot as ETF are joint diplomas between member states and partner countries. What I mean here is what is already happening among universities, where you may obtain a diploma that is released by 2-3 universities, and that is, you can use it in 2-3 different countries without need to go through a recognition process. This is not happening for vocational training and for medium-skilled qualifications. So something that could be promoted are joint diplomas for VET qualifications among member states and partner countries. The other thing is for adult education. This is a very difficult point, not only for migrants, but also for resident population. Budgets are more limited, cultural barriers are there. There is a lot to be done. Again, in what I shared in my slides, there are some documents that go much more in the detail. I would stop here. I know I would like, I said I would say something about qualification recognition and skills validation, but maybe I ask here our facilitator, it's for my second round, right?
Unfortunately, due to time limitations, we will need to, there is no second round.
Okay.
But if you want to just briefly mention something
Okay,
now,
very
it would be
briefly.
great.
Okay, I will put in the chat, there are several practical examples on how you can validate the non-formal and informal skills of migrants. As we know, there are two parallel pathways. One is recognition of qualification. Qualifications are diplomas, okay? And these need to be recognized by an institutional body of any given country. The processes are more and more structured. As ETF, we also developed a mapping of the recognition procedures in different member states and partner countries globally. They are in the slides, the link to this mapping. Also, we are producing guidelines for many countries of origin of migrant workers to the EU on recognition procedures in the different member states. You know that recognition is a prerogative of a single country. It's not a European level recognition, although we have a European qualification framework that can help to refer to the levels that we have in Europe. So recognition is about the qualifications, whereas more and more there is a call to recognize the skills of migrants. So what they can do beyond what is written in a given diploma and what maybe has been acquired more recently and what is more applicable to the labor market. We call this process validation. This can be done also by civil society organizations, okay? Every member state decides who can do the validation of migrants. Again, in my country, I found out in my region, there is a network of validation offices that are also based by a civil society organization. I will share with you the link. Unfortunately, it's all in Italian. Another inspiring practice we have here is training for CSOs, how they can do validation. So on one side, training, how you can validate the skills of migrants. On the other side is a network that is already there, and you will find data how they do this validation. I will also share with you the example of Turkey, which is very interesting because at national level, in the national qualification framework of Turkey, there is a whole strand on validation of skills. It was mainly produced for the Syrian refugees, which are now, many of them already part of the labor market in Turkey. And it's a nice example, we believe, because it has been institutionalized. I will also share what is happening with Ukrainian refugees in a report by CEDEFOP, our sister agency. A lot has been done, as you may know, on the recognition of skills of Ukrainians. So it's a nice practice. And yeah, I stop here. I don't want to take too much time.
Thank you. Thank
But
you so
I
much.
remain available also after the event in case any of you would like to know more.
Of
And
course.
everything I'm mentioning is on our website. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your input. Now we go to Ms. Gemma. From a Euro-Mediterranean perspective, how can civil societies organizations in the Euro-Mediterranean region shift from addressing immediate migration challenges to creating a long-term opportunities for integration and social culture inclusion?
Very easy question. And after all these approaches that we see how complex it is there on the board. No, my idea is to provide with some reflections after all these really inspiring and very important speeches about what is the hardcore of the session. But I want to provide attention and reflection on some points after the results of this conference that I already told you that we organized, and can be interesting just to make all these concrete examples and big job done by organizations a little more on the perspective of the problematic that we are talking about. The problematic is that we have a long-term need perspective with short-term instruments mainly. This is my main and principal idea, starting point. Why we are talking like that? Because current governments of migration and mobility, and taking also labor market as an example, is not working. Let me say, we don't know how to make it working. At the same time, civil society is in the margins of this. Even though I find very, very interesting this idea of co-production from the institutions is what small and shwaya, like we say, we need to push for this, but this is still far away from that. And I want just to provide attention being here in Cyprus today, in the Euro-Mediterranean context, that we have two instruments that seems not to talk together. For example, we have the EU Strategy for Civil Society 2025 up here, talking about the key role of civil society organizations, working with vulnerable groups, taking into consideration the views of migrants, supporting civic space is very relevant, promote social inclusion is a major. This we have as policy, as idea. But at the same time but here migration is not there. It's civil society, as I say, but migration, how to deal with this on all this work, no? Even if they are referring to the Pact of the Mediterranean, to this external action, so we go to the Pact of the Mediterranean. And what we were sharing with my colleague Anna yesterday in the plane, just preparing all our interventions, and we realized that there, in the activities of the plan of the initiative promoted by the Pact of the Mediterranean, next year or this year, we are talking about secure borders, preventing illegal migration and entrances, promoting these legal gateways offices, but at the same time of promoting these legal gateway offices, we are also collaborating with the return of the migrants, and all this relaunching or bringing attention again with an instrument that will be very, I suppose, very important, that is this scaling up talent partnerships. Means facilitating links between EU employers and job seekers in the Mediterranean. But nothing about civil society in this part. So when we are talking about civil society, we are not talking about migration, we are talking about migration in this language that I suppose it can be useful for all of us, but it seems that something is not there, no? So I come back with a super interesting and inspiring conversation that we have previously from Francesca Baroni with this relational space. What is now lacking these relations is the idea for us, coming from these results of the conference, two main ideas. First, social inclusion, and you bring attention on this, is a multidimensional process. Education first, social cohesion, culture, civic participation, the role of migrants, of civil society living with migrants, and economic inclusion, of course. But I bring economic inclusion the last, not because my colleagues are working on that, but just to give attention to all the other things that are important. So if we are talking like this, the civil society is not another stakeholder, is the stakeholder. And I'm come back to the reflection before. So civil society, but, and here I bring you a question mark, which kind of civil society? Only CCOs? Mainly only NGOs working, and they are necessary. Of course, I want to kill myself if I say another thing, but working on the local sphere, good. But why not, and this was our effort in Barcelona last year, open window to the civil society at a large, this ecosystem of actors that can bring all this, and that can be a force in front of other institutional mechanisms that is not working. So there is a link that in this relational space that I was also before your conversation having here, but I think it's key for our idea that, of cooperation in the Euro-Mediterranean region, because we are talking about a topic, migration, mobility, that is hardcore for all the society, not for the seekers of jobs, not for the labor market, is all the society. If we want to share in a real partnership this idea, we need to work in this inclusive idea. And then, just very quickly, to share 4 main ideas coming from the results of the conference that you can place there the concrete things inside, no? First, civic space matters. But it's a precondition of everything. I think our colleague from the Annalyn Foundation Mohammed was telling this. If we, in this round table at the very beginning, that was very interesting to bring this into thing. If we don't make the civic space, the momentum or the space where the actors, the civil society actors leading with migrations can co-create what is the definition of these strategies. What we are talking about. So we are having consultations, we are promoting gatherings of, but we are not promoting really a true civic space in this matter. And we need to do this in the Mediterranean, taking into consideration that we are not equal in this. So we are not managing. We are in front of governance challenge. So we need to be imaginative, not to force societies that perhaps have not the same opportunities or civil society in their countries. So we need to make it possible and not to force a dual standard between Europe and the rest. Second, people-to-people approach matters. And it's important. And all the time in all Euro-Mediterranean strategies we are talking. But in Barcelona, what we conclude is that youth, mobility, and education are the three pillars of this people-to-people approach. So we need to make these three elements speaking and talking. Because, for example, there it was some ideas there that don't panic, I will not share the details, but we are talking about developing a regional recognition to non-formal learning. Why? Because non-formal education is a part of this, to validate the skills with young groups working on that. Second, for example, and very much related to what you have been saying now about the diplomas, establishing an Euromed mobility and skills common, facilitating micro-credentials, for example. Or also, and it has been an idea that has been really bringing into the conclusions and something that can be a long-term dimension, making inclusion more visible and measurable. For example, and combining with your other observatories then, Euro-Mediterranean Observatory on Economic Inclusion, but making that migrations and economic inclusion can bring together this observation about to track how reforms and programs are effective. So finally, of course, local cities and CCOs and organizations should work together. The role of municipalities as such is super important.
Very insightful, so thank you so much. So we have time only for 2 questions, so we can open the floor for any. There are 2 questions. I saw first the 2 people on the back. Of course, we will have the time later on the lunch break to discuss even more. So please state your name, and your question is addressed to any of our panelists.
So I'm Florian, I'm a caseworker for CARDET Cyprus, and I'm mostly focusing on long-term integration of migrants, so definitely this. And I think my question is mostly for Dr. Bashak, and it's how you conciliate the gap between the NGOs and the governments. What I mean is, as NGOs, we are talking to people with a life, we are talking to people that we know their names, we know who they are, and you know, when I see that we don't really give voice to them to speak directly. And then on the other side, we have the EU and the governments who are talking about data, statistics, who are trading, and we can see this with the new Pact on Migration and Asylum. They are trading with safe third countries just for their benefits, as if they were trading petrol or anything else. So how could we conciliate this?
Thank you. So we can take the other question also, and we can answer.
Hi, thank you for a very interesting session. My name is Lama. I lead an organization called Hold My Hand Cyprus. It's refugee women-led, focused on women with displacement experiences, just like myself. My question is to Dr. Pasha. There's always, there's a lot of programs, for example, in Cyprus that improves the skill gaining of migrants, specifically, from my experience, refugees and asylum seekers. But then it stops at some point where it's not, you know, refugees and asylum seekers can't really use those skills at a later stage. So from your experience, what do you think the integration strategy is lacking to improve to have a sustainable model, and that it's not linear, but then, the funding and these projects that are implemented later can have, give a better access to refugees and asylum seeker, for example, to implement those skills, because it always stops at, people implement these projects and then, later we don't know what impact it had, and also no one follow up with these participants of these programs. Thank you.
Dr. Bashak, over to you.
Those are actually two dream questions that I would have loved to get, and I think I telepathically managed to communicate with you guys. Thank you very much. So on the first, I'll go in order. The first question is a great question, and the answer is it's not easy to navigate this room. It's not easy to liaise between multiple actors, but what we're doing is not just taking what's going on at the local level and telling some EU institutions about this. Actually, we are advocating throughout research, throughout advocacy, throughout trainings, an approach that integrates all the stakeholders from the beginning. So we start the dialogue between NGOs, between migrant-led organizations, between local administrative units, between national and EU units, from the beginning of a project, to understand their needs and to also have them start having that conversation in the first place. And that has helped a lot also tailoring our results to their needs better. So we come up with toolkits, we come up with self-assessment tools, because a lot of times, yes, there are those that are categorically against the idea of integration, there could be, but even in contexts where you would think that a lot of policymakers are cognizant of the benefits of, let's say, integration into the labor market, because they don't want migrants on social aid, or good integration into the education, because they don't want parallel societies, a lost generation radicalization. So these can be justified. Sometimes we need to speak their language, just like I did now, but they can be justified, and we can help NGOs, migrant-led organizations advocate. And we also give them the tools like MyPix to show to their governments, look, why are we behind this country? Look, you don't have to be Sweden to do this. Spain does this really well. And we are very similar. Why can't we do this? So we're also trying to equip them with the tools and always work on multiple levels. So that's how we try to navigate the system. And we're also trying to be communicating with all political parties, even at the EU level, because there is something that they could do and they want to do. A lot of times they don't have the tools. So it's important to at least provide the tools, provide the information, and if they don't do anything about it, that's, yeah, c'est la vie. And when it comes to the question on from the hold my hand, standing right between you guys and the lunch break right now, I'm feeling a lot of pressure. The problem you raised is a universal problem between skills education and transfer to jobs. I do not know a country where this problem doesn't exist. There are different ways of dealing with this, but it requires, just like it has been raised by the speakers before me, a whole of society approach, an integrated approach where you expand the skills concept, including the basic skills, in these recognition programs, and also focusing on the transfer of jobs. And that requires actually incorporating another sector, businesses, from the beginning in these sectors. Again, I'm going to turn to Spain. They're doing great in this area. Also Germany, when it comes to recognition, right? There are chambers, there are business unions, where you can collect data and understand, okay, so at this university, I want to do a one-year training, and then I'm going to give these people who came from their countries a work permit. What should be that training in so that these people can get jobs? If in the area of Girona, I need jobs in tourism, does that sound right? I will then open up programs for this kind training. So it really requires an integrated approach with the businesses. I'm not saying they are angelic figures businesses. We have a lot of informal inclusion in the labor market because migrants are cheap, but that is more on the government than to regulate and to enforce formality more. And there are a lot of international support on this, a lot of programs promoting the shift from informal to formal, with a lot of tax subsidies, social security subsidies provided to these companies. So the tools are there. We just need to use them smartly, more smartly.
Thank you.
Ended, hopefully.
So I know our time is up, but I don't want to close these insightful reflections without the closing remarks. So I will give you 1 minute each, very briefly, for a closing statement. It's good enough?
I wish we had hours and days to discuss this, the way forward. So engagement, Gemma mentioned it before me. Policies to support and bridge support to employers, but also overcome the barriers, such as putting the focus on talent, youth talent on the way forward. Putting the focus, when it comes to engagement, social media. Putting the focus on when you are doing non-formal education and workshops on electrical scooters, on, you know, what is coming next. We have to bring our thinking process and the policy support to what youth is expecting for the future that is ahead of us, the future of jobs, the future of education, the future of living. That's it from my side.
Thank you. Dr. Bashak?
Yeah, I feel a bit unfair because I got the two questions, but very quickly, something that we didn't get to focus on, and another important area of integration is really social cohesion. And a lot of, for instance, the skills trainings that are taking place in participation from both the host community members and the migrants, a lot of times they only place, 2-3 people in formal jobs, but they do manage promoting a mutual understanding and changing the perceptions of the two groups towards each other. And I find a lot of value in this because, unfortunately, we're surrounded by a very easily targeting, stereotyping discourse politically, globally, a very populist discourse where scapegoating is a politician's way of, getting rid of their account instead of being accountable. And I think that we need to be really wary of this discourse and wary of this disinformation. A lot of times people get really carried away with some ideas on migrants, on refugees that are not even reflecting the reality. And we really need to, at the age of social media, check the resources, check the news, and make sure before you disseminate some news about one particular group, a minority, a refugee, a special group, check them. And, maybe it's just they are being targeted because they are an easy target. And that does not help. Neither skills, neither labor market integration, neither to peaceful coexistence. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Gemma?
Well, I don't know if I have something to add to because I was prepared the first, provide a single idea, but I think the main idea is, first, as we see during the panel, a lot of things are going on, so I'm pleased that a lot of the language that we push forward is there in the small, and not small, but in the partial or sectorial parts of our work. But what we need is to work more, as I start, in a long-term perspective. For that, we need to, I think, to be convinced of one of the ideas of the panel, that mobility and migrations are not an asset like as such, but are at least a possibility. And in our relational space, that is the Euro-Mediterranean, if we are not dealing like this seriously, we are losing something that is essential, that you say, the people and the human beings there in this space. So we have the instruments, We have also a political will, but Europe, and that I will be clearly not putting the thing on it, Europe has a big responsibility at that moment of a context of very turbulent moment, and values and everything, it's so important. So youth mobility and education bring together to the key point. So this is not true, we have the instruments, but we don't know why we don't bring these instruments at the hardcore of the politics. And this is not only our work, but also it's our work not to bring us the idea that we are in the margins. We are in the central, and we need to act like we are. So perhaps like this, we can bring attention to this. But the instruments, I agree, and the knowledge are there, and the objective. So hopefully we can do this.
Can I add to this? Because
Very briefly.
very briefly, because Gemma, you have a point on international partnerships. The instruments are there, both on a global migration, global compact of migration perspective, now being discussed in New York, as well as with the pact implementation, talent partnerships, skills partnerships. The legal instruments are all there. And if I bring it to I mean, we are in Cyprus here today. The geopolitical position, the possibility to work in Cyclops and other locations to start with education, but developing international partnerships around skill building will then create the space for jobs, for collaboration, for exchanges.
Thank
So
you.
I just felt the need to add that.
Of course. Mrs. Maria Vittoria, closing with you.
Yes.
Thank you. Well, I build on what the other panelists were just saying in terms of how can civil society organization bring the wealth of their knowledge, humanity, I would also say, and capacities at a system level. That's for me the big question. Meaning that it's very good, is excellent to be excellent executor and implementers of very nice projects. But all this wealth of knowledge, how can be translated at system level into policies? And that's what we experience as ETF in all the partner countries where we work. And here, to be frank with you, even myself, when I try to involve civil society organization in the policy dialogue with governments in Northern Africa, Middle East, Western Balkans, Central Asia, there is an issue of representativeness. Whom to invite? And I saw in some countries, NGOs and civil society organizations got federated, and they set up platform on skills. I mean on skills. And there it's easier to involve because otherwise, if you don't have one voice, if it's difficult, because then when you invite one CSO, you may be contested why you did not invite this other one, and then the other one. And these organizations sometimes are of small scale, so they cannot devote so much time to attend all the meetings, and you cannot invite all the NGOs. So I think that what I saw working well, to build a bit on what my colleague from Union of Mediterranean was saying, you have to come to the policy level. Not only, as a wish, but make it happen and make it very practical to get together in a given country, go to the ministries and ask to sit at the policy dialogue, because that's where the big decisions are taken that also will influence your life. I know it's not easy. I know it's not easy, and there is an overall trend towards diminishing the public space for civil society organization. But being divided makes things even more difficult.
Thank you.
So as I close here, and thank you very much for the invitation.
Thank you so much. So please join me on thanking our experts. Thank you so much.